My love, there is something I have carried inside me for a very long time, something I never knew how to explain because some wounds don't bleed where people can see them. They stay hidden beneath smiles, beneath ordinary conversations, beneath the version of ourselves we show to the world. Before you came into my life, there were nights when I sat alone with thoughts that felt heavier than my own heart. There were moments when I questioned my strength, my worth, and even my ability to keep moving forward. I learned how to survive, but survival is not the same as living, and for a long time, I was only surviving. Today, I need to tell you about the pain that nearly broke me, not because I want your sympathy, not because I want you to see me as a victim, but because if you are going to know my love, you deserve to know my scars too. You deserve to know the battles that shaped the man standing before you. There were days when giving up felt easier than holding on. Days when the silence around me was louder than any noise. Days when I carried so much weight inside my heart that I wondered if I would ever feel light again. But somehow, through all of it, a small part of me kept believing that there was a reason to continue. A reason I couldn't see yet, a future I hadn't met yet, and now when I look at you, I think maybe that reason was you. So tonight, my love, let me tell you the story of what nearly broke me and how loving you helped me find the pieces of myself again. My love, there is something I have carried inside me for longer than most people can imagine. It is not something you can see when you look into my eyes. It is not something that appears in photographs or reveals itself during casual conversations. It is the kind of pain that learns how to hide, the kind that becomes so familiar that it starts feeling like part of who you are. For years, I convinced myself that I could carry it alone. I told myself that being strong meant staying silent. I believed that if I spoke about what was hurting me, I would somehow become weaker. So I became an expert at pretending. I smiled when I was exhausted. I laughed when my heart felt empty. I told people I was okay when I was barely holding myself together. The strange thing about pain is that it does not always arrive all at once. Sometimes it enters your life quietly. It settles into the corners of your heart without making a sound. Day by day, it grows heavier until one morning you wake up and realize you have been carrying a mountain without even noticing. That was what happened to me. There wasn't one single moment that nearly broke me. It was 1,000 moments, 1,000 disappointments, 1,000 sleepless nights, 1,000 times I looked in the mirror and wondered if I was enough. I remember feeling trapped inside my own thoughts. No matter where I went, they followed me. No matter how hard I tried to escape them, they always found a way back. Some days felt normal on the outside, but inside there was a storm I never showed anyone. People often think heartbreak only comes from losing someone you love, but sometimes heartbreak comes from losing parts of yourself. I lost confidence. I lost peace. I lost the ability to believe that better days were coming, and slowly I started losing hope, not all at once, just little pieces at a time. The worst part wasn't the sadness. The worst part was becoming used to it. Imagine carrying a heavy weight every day for so long that you stop questioning why you're carrying it. Imagine becoming so familiar with loneliness that it feels normal. Imagine becoming so accustomed to disappointment that you stop expecting happiness. That was the place I found myself in. I stopped dreaming. I stopped imagining a brighter future. I stopped believing that life could surprise me in beautiful ways. I existed, but I wasn't truly living. There were nights when sleep refused to come. I would lie awake staring into darkness while my thoughts replayed every mistake I had ever made, every regret, every failure, every moment I wished I could erase. Those thoughts became louder when the world became quiet and the silence felt endless. I often wondered why certain people seemed to move through life with ease while everything felt difficult for me. I questioned what was wrong with me. I searched for answers that never came. The more answers I searched for, the more lost I felt. I carried guilt for things that weren't entirely my fault. I carried responsibility for things I couldn't control. I carried expectations that no human being should have to carry alone. And eventually, all of it became too much. But instead of asking for help, I became quieter. Instead of opening my heart, I built walls around it. I convinced myself that nobody would understand. Maybe I was afraid they would. Maybe I was afraid that if I finally admitted how broken I felt, it would become real. So I stayed silent. I smiled, I nodded, I kept moving, yet every step felt heavier than the last. Sometimes people looked at me and saw strength. What they didn't see was exhaustion. What they didn't see was how hard I was fighting simply to keep going. There were mornings when getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. There were afternoons when I felt disconnected from everything around me. There were evenings when loneliness sat beside me like an old friend I never invited. I began questioning my purpose. questioning my future, questioning whether anything would ever change. The hardest battles are often invisible. Nobody applauds you for surviving them because nobody knows they exist. Nobody realizes how much courage it takes to keep moving forward when your heart is tired. Nobody sees the tears you wipe away before facing the world. Nobody hears the conversations you have with yourself in the middle of the night. And because nobody sees them, those battles can make you feel completely alone. That loneliness nearly broke me. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being physically alone, the deeper kind, the kind that follows you even when you're surrounded by people. The kind that makes you feel unseen, unheard, unimportant. I spent years carrying that feeling, years wondering if anyone would ever truly understand me, years wondering if anyone would ever look beyond the version of me I showed the world, because the truth is, my love, I became very good at hiding. I hid my fears, I hid my insecurities, I hid my sadness, I hid my wounds so well that even I started forgetting they were there. But hidden wounds do not disappear, they grow, they wait, they become heavier, and eventually, they demand to be acknowledged. There came a point when I realized I couldn't keep pretending. The mask was becoming too heavy. The effort required to appear okay was draining whatever strength I had left. I was tired, not physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, the kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix, the kind of tiredness that settles deep inside your soul. I remember looking at the world around me and feeling disconnected from it, as if everyone else had received instructions for life that I somehow missed. As if everyone else knew where they were going, while I stood still, watching, waiting, wandering. The uncertainty consumed me. I feared failure. I feared rejection. I feared becoming someone I wouldn't recognize. Most of all, I feared that nothing would ever change. Fear has a strange way of shrinking your world. It convinces you not to take risks. It convinces you not to hope. It convinces you that disappointment is inevitable. And once you start believing those lies, they become difficult to escape. For a long time, I believed them. I believed I was destined to carry pain forever. I believed happiness belonged to other people. I believed love was something that happened in stories, not in real life. I believed I had already missed my chance. Those beliefs became chains, invisible chains, chains that limited my dreams, chains that controlled my choices, chains that kept me standing in the same place while life moved forward. The person I became during that time was someone even I struggled to recognize. I became distant, guarded, careful. I stopped letting people get too close, because when you've been hurt enough times, vulnerability begins to feel dangerous. Opening your heart feels risky, trust feels risky, hope feels risky, so you protect yourself, you build walls, you create distance, you convince yourself that isolation is safer than disappointment. But isolation has its own kind of pain, a quieter pain. A slower pain, a pain that slowly convinces you that you're meant to face everything alone. And that belief nearly destroyed me, because no one is meant to carry every burden by themselves. No one is meant to fight every battle alone. No one is meant to survive without connection. Yet that was exactly what I was trying to do. I kept carrying everything, the grief, the disappointment, the uncertainty, the fears, the regrets, the loneliness, until one day I realized something. The weight wasn't getting lighter. I was simply becoming weaker beneath it, and there is a difference, a very important difference. Pretending to be strong is not the same as being strong. Enduring pain is not the same as healing from it. Surviving is not the same as living. For years I survived. For years I carried wounds I never treated. For years I walked through life feeling incomplete, feeling lost, feeling broken in ways I couldn't explain. The hardest truth I had to face was that the thing nearly breaking me wasn't one tragedy, one failure, or one painful memory. It was the accumulation of everything I refused to confront, every unspoken fear, every hidden hurt, every disappointment I buried instead of processing, every tear I refused to shed, every emotion I locked away. They all remained inside me, waiting, growing heavier, becoming louder, until eventually I could no longer ignore them. My love, there is something beautiful that happened after all those years of carrying pain. Nothing changed overnight. There was no dramatic moment, no miracle, no sudden sunrise after a lifetime of darkness. Instead, it happened quietly, slowly, almost without me noticing, and it began with you. Before you, I had become accustomed to expecting the worst. I had trained my heart to prepare for disappointment. Every time something good entered my life, I waited for it to leave. Every time happiness appeared, I assumed it would be temporary. Pain had taught me to be cautious. Heartbreak had taught me to stay guarded. Loss had taught me not to get too attached, so when I first began feeling something for you, part of me wanted to run. Not because I didn't care. Because I cared too much. You represented everything I was afraid of losing. You represented hope, and hope can be terrifying when you've spent years protecting yourself from disappointment. I remember wondering whether I should let you see the real me, not the version that smiled politely, not the version that pretended everything was fine, the real me, the one carrying scars, the one carrying fears, the one carrying memories that still hurt. I wasn't sure if anyone could love that version of me. I wasn't even sure if I loved that version of myself, but something about you felt different. You never demanded perfection. You never asked me to become someone else. You never expected me to hide my flaws, and that changed something inside me. For the first time in a very long time, I felt safe enough to lower my guard, not completely, not immediately, but little by little. The walls I had spent years building started developing cracks. Small cracks at first, then larger ones, until eventually, light began finding its way inside. You probably didn't even realize what you were doing. Sometimes it was the way you listened. Sometimes it was the way you remembered small details. Sometimes it was the way your presence made difficult days feel less overwhelming. The world didn't seem heavy when you were in it. The burdens I carried didn't disappear, but somehow they became easier to carry. And that mattered more than you could ever know. Because healing isn't always about removing pain. Sometimes healing is simply finding someone willing to sit beside you while you carry it. You became that person. You never rushed my healing. You never demanded explanations. You never asked me to be stronger than I was. You simply stayed, and sometimes staying is the most powerful form of love. There were days when I felt broken, days when old wounds reopened, days when doubts returned, days when my past whispered lies into my ear. Yet somehow your presence reminded me that my past wasn't my future. You helped me understand that surviving difficult seasons did not mean I was destined to live in them forever. For years, I viewed my scars as evidence of weakness. You helped me see them differently. You helped me see them as evidence that I survived. That realization changed everything, because when you spend enough time feeling damaged, you begin identifying yourself through your pain. You stop seeing your strengths. You stop recognizing your resilience. You stop acknowledging how far you've come. You only see what you've lost. But love has a way of restoring perspective. Your love didn't erase my scars. It taught me not to be ashamed of them. And that made all the difference. I remember moments when we talked about ordinary things, simple things, things most people would consider insignificant. Yet even those conversations felt meaningful to me because they reminded me what peace felt like. For so long, my mind had been a battlefield. For so long, every day felt like a struggle. For so long, I had forgotten what emotional safety felt like. Then you arrived, and suddenly there were moments of calm, moments when my thoughts stopped racing, moments when my heart stopped preparing for disaster, moments when I simply existed without fear. Those moments became precious, not because they were extraordinary, because they were rare. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. You gave me permission to rest, to stop fighting every second, to stop carrying every burden alone, to stop pretending I had everything under control. There is an incredible kind of healing that happens when someone sees your pain and doesn't turn away. Most people only want the easy parts of a person, the happy parts, the successful parts, the confident parts, but real love is different. Real love stays when things become difficult. Real love remains when tears replace smiles. Real love chooses connection over convenience. That is what you gave me. You saw the parts of me I tried to hide, and instead of leaving, you stayed. That kind of acceptance can transform a person's life, because deep down, most of us are carrying the same fear. The fear that if people truly knew us, they wouldn't stay. The fear that our flaws make us unlovable. The fear that our wounds make us too complicated. You challenged every one of those fears without even realizing it. You taught me that being loved isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. And for someone who spent years hiding behind masks, that lesson felt revolutionary. Slowly, I began changing, not because you forced me to, because your love inspired me to. I started believing in possibilities again. I started imagining a future that wasn't defined by fear. I started allowing myself to dream. The dreams weren't grand at first. They were simple peace, happiness, a life that felt meaningful, a life that felt shared, a life where I no longer carried everything alone. For years, darkness convinced me that I was isolated. Your love reminded me that I wasn't. For years, pain convinced me that I was damaged beyond repair. Your love reminded me that healing was possible. For years, fear convinced me that hope was dangerous. Your love reminded me that hope is necessary. That doesn't mean every struggle disappeared. Life remained imperfect. Challenges remained. Difficult days still came, old wounds still ached from time to time, but now there was something different. Now there was you, and knowing you existed changed how I faced everything else, because pain feels different when you know someone cares. Loneliness feels different when you know someone understands. Fear feels different when you know someone believes in you. Love doesn't remove life's storms, but it gives you shelter while they pass. You became that shelter. You became the reminder that even after heartbreak, beauty still exists. Even after loss, joy still exists. Even after darkness, light still exists. You helped me discover parts of myself I thought were gone forever. The ability to trust, the ability to hope, the ability to love without constantly expecting loss. Those gifts are impossible to measure. No words can fully explain what they mean. No speech can perfectly capture how profoundly one person's love can impact another person's life. All I know is this: the man who stands before you today is not the same man who once believed he would never escape his pain. He is stronger, softer, wiser, more hopeful, and much of that transformation began because of you, not because you saved me, but because you reminded me that I was worth saving, not because you fixed every broken piece, but because you never stopped believing those pieces could become whole again, not because you carried my burdens for me, but because you walked beside me while I carried them. And sometimes that kind of love becomes the very thing that keeps a person moving forward when everything inside them wants to stop.